He never thought a small letter taped to his front door would be the beginning of something that would flip his entire life upside down. It was a quiet Tuesday morning, the kind of morning where nothing feels urgent. Coffee steaming in his hand, sunlight slipping through half-open blinds, and the low hum of a neighborhood that looked peaceful on the outside. Daniel Carter had lived in that house for 18 years. 18. Long enough to watch kids grow up, neighbors move in and out, trees get taller, paint fade, and memories stack in every corner of the place. It wasn't just a house, it was everything. His wife had picked the curtains. His daughter had taken her first steps in the living room. His son had carved his initials into the old oak tree out back. And now, someone had taped a notice to his door like none of that mattered. Violation notice, immediate action required. He frowned, pulling it off and reading it again slowly. Unapproved mailbox color. He actually laughed at first, thought it was a joke. But it was. The Homeowners Association had flagged his mailbox because it was non-compliant with community standards. The problem? It was navy blue, not black. That was it. No warning, no conversation, just a fine. $150. He shook his head, crumpled the paper slightly, then smoothed it back out. It felt ridiculous. So he did what any reasonable person would do. He ignored it. A week later, another notice came. Then another. Each one more aggressive than the last. Late fees added, warnings about escalation, mentions of further action. That's when he realized this wasn't about the mailbox. This was about control. The HOA president, Linda Graves, had moved into the neighborhood just a year ago, and ever since then, things had changed. People whispered about her. Strict, petty, relentless. The kind of person who measured grass height with a ruler. Daniel had never had issues before. The previous HOA barely bothered anyone, but now it felt like living under a microscope. He decided to handle it. He drove down to the HOA office, notice in hand, calm but firm. The receptionist barely looked up when he walked in. I'm here about a violation notice. She nodded like she'd heard it 100 times already. Mailbox color. He paused. Yeah. She handed him a form without emotion. Fill this out if you'd like to appeal. Appeal, he said, it's a mailbox. That's the process. So he filled it out. Explained that the mailbox had been that color for years, that no one had complained before, that it was in good condition. He thought logic would win. He was wrong. 2 weeks later, the response came. Appeal denied. Fine increased to $300. That's when something shifted inside him. Not anger, not yet, but disbelief turning into something heavier. He wasn't someone who looked for conflict. He kept to himself, paid his dues, followed rules, at least the reasonable ones. But this felt targeted. Still, he decided to comply. He repainted the mailbox black. Took pictures. Sent proof. Problem solved, right? No. A few days later, another notice. Improper repainting, gloss level not compliant. He stared at the paper in silence. Gloss level. That's when the anger finally showed up. Not explosive, not loud. Cold. Quiet. The kind that sits in your chest and waits. He started paying attention. Walking the neighborhood. Looking closely. And what he saw changed everything. Half the houses had violations. Different shades of paint, slightly taller grass, decorations that didn't match guidelines. But no notices. No fines. Just him. That's when he knew. This wasn't random. He started asking around. Neighbors were hesitant at first. No one wanted trouble. But slowly stories came out. Linda had disputes with people before. Personal grudges turned into violations. Selective enforcement. Targeting. And suddenly, Daniel wasn't just dealing with a mailbox. He was dealing with a system. So he stopped reacting and started planning. He dug into HOA bylaws. Every page, every clause. Late nights, coffee gone cold beside him, reading language designed to confuse. But Daniel was patient. And patient people, when pushed far enough, become dangerous in a very different way. He found inconsistencies, procedures that weren't followed, rules that contradicted each other, enforcement guidelines that required equal application, which clearly wasn't happening. He started documenting everything. Photos, dates, copies of notices, comparisons with other homes. And then he did something no one expected. He filed a formal complaint, not just against the violation, against the HOA, against Linda, citing selective enforcement, harassment, and procedural violations. At first, nothing happened. Silence, then pressure, more notices, bigger fines, legal threats. They thought they could scare him into backing down. They misjudged him. Because by then, Daniel wasn't just defending himself. He was building something. A case. He reached out to a lawyer. At first, even the lawyer was skeptical. HOAs are difficult, he said. They have a lot of power. But then he saw the documentation, the patterns, the evidence, and his tone changed. This is different. The complaint escalated. What started as a mailbox issue turned into a legal battle. Neighbors began to notice. Then they began to talk. And then something unexpected happened. They started coming forward. One by one. Stories that sounded just like his. Fines over nothing. Harassment. Pressure. Fear. People who had paid quietly just to avoid trouble. But now, they had someone pushing back. And that changes everything. The HOA tried to contain it. Sent out letters. Reminders of rules. Warnings about community harmony. But it was too late. Because Daniel did one more thing. Something that broke the internet. He told his story. He posted everything online. The notices. The photos. The timeline. Clear, detailed, undeniable. At first, it was just a few shares. Then hundreds. Then thousands. People were furious. Not just from his neighborhood. From everywhere. Because everyone has heard stories like this. Power being abused. Rules being twisted. And someone finally standing up. Local news picked it up. Then bigger outlets. Cameras showed up on his street. Reporters asking questions the HOA couldn't dodge. Linda stopped appearing in public. Statements were released. Carefully worded, defensive. But the damage was done. Because now it wasn't just Daniel versus HOA. It was public versus injustice. The investigation began. External review. Audits. Legal scrutiny. Everything the HOA had tried to avoid. And the findings. Worse than anyone expected. Selective enforcement confirmed. Improper fines. Procedural violations. Abuse of authority. The board members started resigning. One by one. Linda held out the longest. Until she couldn't. She stepped down quietly. No speech, no apology. Just gone. The fines dismissed, refunds issued, policies rewritten, oversight increased. And Daniel, he didn't celebrate the way people expected. No victory speech, no big moment, just a quiet evening on his porch. Same house, same neighborhood, but different, because now it felt like his again. The mailbox, still black, same gloss, but no one cared anymore, because it was never about the mailbox. It was about how far someone can be pushed before they push back. And when they do, sometimes they don't just win, they change everything.